Valorant is dying. That's what people say. They say it on Reddit, they say it on VLR, they say it on Twitter. They complain all the time. They complain about many different things. But do I agree with them? Do I think Valorant is dying? Well, yes. I do think Valorant is dying for completely different reasons than what you typically hear. And we're here to discuss, or at least I'm gonna share my own opinion about why I think Valorant is dying and for whom. In this video, I will talk about all of the concerns that the community has about Valorant, and I will also share my own concerns because they're vastly different from what you will typically hear. And that's what I say in the intro, that yes, Valorant is dying, but for completely different reasons for me than for the majority of the complainers that you can see on Reddit or VLR. Now, what I do think is that Valorant is dying for the people who really care about the game. Now, let me explain. Let's talk about the community concerns first. So we're going to talk about utility, shooting, precise gunplay. We're going to talk about toxicity. We're going to talk about prices. We're going to talk about the replay system, all of that. But the first thing that we have to dispel is the thing that, well, actually would indicate if a game is dying. And that's the amount of players that are playing the game. So let's talk a little bit about that first. So bear in mind that the website I'm going to show to you are not fully accurate. I would even say that they're definitely not accurate because they don't have the direct source of information from Riot. Only Riot would be able to tell us how many people actually play the game, but they do not do that. I don't know why. I don't think they should have any concerns, but let's see what Valorant Trackers, the first website, tells us. And this is the entirety of Valorant's duration on the market. As you can see, it steadily was growing in the first 2 years, and it just peaks last year with the biggest amount of players during August 2024, and after that it stabilizes around the same level as early 2024. So just looking at this one graph tells you, oh yeah, this game was steadily growing for the past 5 years and is still looking very, very decent. If you look at the numbers, Valorant Tracker tells us that we have between 15 to 24 million players active every single month. Now, I'm telling you that this might not be accurate because, for example, a different website called ActivePlayer.io tells us completely different numbers. They tell us that in the last 30 days, we have 25.5 million players, which is completely different from Valorant Tracker. But even if we take the values that the two websites are giving us completely separately from each other, then both of them show a similar story. There's a steady grow in player base and standard fluctuations between the active players each month. So when you took a look at the graph that Active.io is showing for the Valorant's live monthly player count, as you can see here, starting from May 21, which is a year after the release of the game, it still steadily grows every month. And bear in mind that those numbers most likely are not showing the Chinese numbers. Or maybe the difference is that Active.io actually shows the Chinese numbers of players and Valorant Tracker does not. But as you can see, both of those websites are giving you a very, very solid amount of information that showcase to you that the game is definitely not dying because the player base is very active. Another thing that people love to use as an indication if a game is dying or not is Twitch numbers. And I would say that those numbers are definitely not something that you should be looking at, but just to showcase to you that even the people that use this as an argument are just playing it wrong. Valorant in the last year was the 4th most watched on the planet, ahead of Counter-Strike. And you can argue that's the most common argument that people have when using Twitch as an indicator, is that there's a decline in both stream time and watch time in Valorant. While Counter-Strike has a growing number, for example, in the last year. When you look at the red and green, you can be like, yeah, this game is declining, so probably dying, and this one is growing, so that's good because it's green. Well, the thing is, Counter-Strike has 30 years of history, while Valorant is a brand new game with just 5 years on the market. There are gonna be moments where the game is gonna grow when it comes to its watch time on Twitch and so on. Streamers are flocking to new games, and there's definitely a lot of people that quit streaming the game after some time when they just want to try out something new. That's completely normal, and after few years of a new game, it's definitely happening. So any numbers that are going down in Valorant should be expected because it's a newer game that will definitely hit a moment when it's gonna be on a decline on Twitch. But that has no correlation with the amount of people that are playing the game in general, because streaming is a complete separate thing from just playing the game. And even if you just look at the numbers, Valorant has incredible numbers on Twitch, and that doesn't seem to be changing. And also pay attention that Valorant has esports included in those numbers, just like Counter-Strike. So you can also think of like how many tournaments are being broadcasted by Counter-Strike and how many tournaments are being broadcasted by Valorant. Valorant has way smaller numbers, way smaller hours when it comes to broadcasted hours when it comes to the esports, because there's less events. People complaining that there's not much Valorant to watch. No. Another thing that people love using as an argument is Google Trends. Oh, Valorant is not really that popular on Google Trends, so there's less people trying it out. Well, take a look at the graph. Blue is Valorant when it comes to Google Trends. Red is CS2. CSGO is yellow, green is just Counter-Strike. I typed out 3 different ones for CS because they all are kind of connected, and we could sum them up even though one person might Google all of those at the same time, so it's not exactly precise. But there's one thing that I would like to just show. The peak of CS2 was the moment it was released, right? Over here, as you can see, it was more Googled than Valorant. But at the same time, the most Googled CS2 ever is the level of what Valorant is currently being Googled on the trends. So how the hell people are saying like, oh, Valorant's dying, when it's clearly more popular than CS? And that is a fact. Also bear in mind that we had confirmation from official sources that China has reached 2 million concurrent players at the same time playing the game when it was released since last year, right? If I'm not mistaken. Anyway, the point is, China is rapidly growing when it comes to the amount of people playing Valorant, and that was an issue again in general that CS always had. They could never break into the Asian markets in a very dominant fashion. But Valorant is very popular in Japan, popular in Korea, popular now in China, and is taking the entire Asian region by storm. So there's gonna be a very big growth in that region that we will not particularly feel ourselves in Europe or in America, but it's gonna be a factor in the global population of Valorant. Since we now established that when it comes to the actual number of players, the game is definitely not dying, let's talk about the community concerns that convince them that the game is dying. Because I think the term Valorant is dying is just thrown loosely just to establish like an opinion, oh, I don't like the game anymore. Essentially, that's what people try to convey by saying this. That's at least what I think. But one of the biggest concerns and complaints that we have heard lately is that people complain about the fact that the game is not about shooting anymore, apparently, and it's all about utility. Now, I do agree that there was too much util in the game, but that was solely because of Teho. Teho was overpowered. I said that after 15 minutes of testing him out in a custom game when he was spoiled and when I had the early access to the agent in the first place. Overpowered, 100% should have been nerfed. 2 weeks after the release of that agent, he should have been already nerfed, and it didn't happen. So there was like this skewed perception just because of Teho's existence. There was so much util in the game that was actually very impactful, and that kind of started the avalanche of complaints. Now, after the nerf of Teho, that calmed down quite a lot. People also complained about the amount of util in the game because they watch pro players play. And some of the pro teams, not every single one of them, but some of the pro teams actually combine the utility very well. And they were abusing the Teho because it's overpowered, and obviously pro players should be abusing the overpowered stuff. Now, but that brings me to what most people have experience with, and that is ranked. And you cannot gaslight me by saying that utility is a problem in ranked. It's not. The game is mostly about shooting. The reason for that is, even at Immortal 3, the amount of utility that is being used by the players And the way that is being utilized is just not efficient at all. And I'm telling you that after 5 years of playing the game, almost 8 hours per day, I basically almost every month have around 130 hours in Valorant. I have over 5k hours now probably in Valorant, or even more. And it was never an issue. I'm Immortal 3 every single season. Well, now probably like Immortal 2 and 3, bouncing around that shit. But it's never an issue. I actually complain about the lack of utility, the lack of understanding how to use your utility in ranked, because I have initiators who don't know how to use their util, they don't know when to use it. I have controllers who don't even put smokes in correct positions. And this is happening in every single region, not only in Europe where I play. This is the same stuff at every rank, at every region. So how on earth are we complaining about utility being too strong when it's barely being used correctly in the game at the ranked level? Not only that, you know what are the three most picked three most picked agents in the entire game in ranked at every level? I'll give you a second now to say it out loud. You probably are correct, because it is Jett, Clove, and Reyna. Those three are the most picked. Those three have almost no util. And those three, if they use util, is to help them get kills. Like directly. Right? And have sustain to not be dead. So, there's no way if... Let me say it this way. If the utility in the game would have been a problem, more people would be using agents that are actually impactful with the utility. But that's never the case. People don't use those agents, but yet the majority complains about those agents. So what gives, right? What's even more funny is that Valorant understands that they don't want to have too much utility in the game. How do I know that? Well, because I played the game since the beginning of it. I played it in an alpha, and I played it every day almost for the past 5 years. Now, not many of you are in the same situation when you tried it out in alpha and are still playing it for the past 5 years. Some of you skipped some stages of the game, some maybe just started it a year ago, right? And I am here to tell you that the amount of util that we had in the past was like double of what we have now. We had cheaper utility, we had every flash costing between 150 to 200 credits instead of 250, we had Sage Wall costing 200, we had Satchels being 100, we had second grenade on Raze by default. I mean, you had to buy it, but you had 2 grenades every round. You had Jett with 2 updrafts and 3 smokes lasting 7 seconds. You had 2 steam beacons and ultimate from Brimstone being 6 orbs. Every single ultimate in the game, apart from Phoenix and Reyna, were cheaper. Sova's ultimate was 7 orbs. We had Brimstone ultimate being 6 orbs. We had Breach ultimate being 7. Viper ultimate being 7 as well. We had Jett ultimate at 6, which was absolutely insane. Every single... Oh, right. Completely forgot. We had Breach with 3 flashes. Sky with 3 flashes. And a cooldown on it. All of that was in the game. And Valorant just said, you know what? That's too much. Let's tone it down. They decreased the amount of util. They upped the price. And by the way, that was one of my actual shit takes. Because when the patch hit 4 years ago, if I'm not mistaken, that made all of the utility more expensive and most of the ultimates more expensive as well, I said publicly that my opinion is that this is gonna hurt the game long term. And I was wrong. The developers were right to make the game more expensive when it comes to credits and make the ultimates more rare because of upping the cost of the orbs. So, mea culpa. I was wrong and you guys were right in Valorant developer team. That was a good decision. And that showcased that the Valorant developer team already understood that they don't want to have that much utility being used in the game or just spammed. Or like on eco rounds, essentially every single player had maximum kit and was just spamming utility because it was so cheap. So the game showcases to you that there's progress in this regard, including Teho in the game was a mistake in the current form. And that I feel like just completely people just forgot what happened in the past. But in general, for me, the game is still about shooting. You will use the utility to try to get kills by flashing someone, stunning them, or like flashing them out of a position, but you barely see utility actually getting kills on its own. It was actually way worse in the past. When Killjoy was introduced, I was getting like 2 kills with nanoswarms over almost every round. Getting kills with raids with paint shots was happening every round. And I feel like people just forget how it was in the past. Even now that people are getting better with utility than it was in the past, it's still a non-issue in my eyes. I feel people are emotional about how they look at pro games, and then they try somehow to lie to themselves that this is the same in the ranked games. I think it's delusion, and I think people are complaining too much about that, and they need to actually look at the gameplay with their own eyes instead of just complaining about a problem in the vacuum. The next issue I would like to tackle is smurfing. It's something that happens more often at the lower ranks than the higher ranks, because for me, for example, if I have someone who is a Radiant player and smurf at Immortal 1 or 2, I don't see an issue. Like, it's okay, he's better than me, but the difference is not that big, you know? But when it comes to like someone who is like Immortal 3 and he smurfs at, I don't know, Silver, well then obviously he's just running circles around everyone there and just gets 40 kills each round. Now, I do think smurfing exists. I do think smurfing is a problem, but it's a problem that exists in every game, and in every game is being tackled a little bit differently. Now, do I think Valorant is doing a good job at handling smurfs? I think there are steps that are actually pretty decent, because in our game, in Valorant, we have something called performance bonus. And the reason why that exists is to make sure that the smurfs who are overperforming are gonna be ranking up and gaining MMR much faster than other players. So this is one of the steps that Valorant developers actually implemented into the game to fight against smurfing. It's a good system, and if you ever made a new account and you actually try harder, you would actually see how fast you're getting higher. I will give you myself as an example, because I wanted to prove a point. I made several new accounts that I ranked up myself to level 20 and started playing unranked. Every single time I made that new account, I got to Immortal 3 in the scope of 50 to 70 games. That's not a lot. I went to Immortal the fastest, I think, at 45 games. No, wait, that was Immortal 3. Immortal 1 was even faster. But essentially, a player who's like an Immortal level, he's gonna start on a new account at Diamond 3 or Ascendant 1, and from that point, he just has to win games to just get to that Immortal. It's gonna be just a matter of time, but it's not that many matches. But he starts at a point when the disparity in skill is not that big, right? So the similar it happens with someone who is lower rank and just completely wrecks people with incredible numbers. The game recognizes that this player is overperforming and boosts up the points that he gets, or gets a double rank up as well. Now, there's one thing that no one can ever fix, and that is when a player just loses games on purpose. Unless he's going AFK and just jumping up and down in spawn, that can be detected. But if he just plays the game and just decides not to win because he's just not trying, it's very hard to prove that he's actually actively sabotaging the game. And the developer cannot really do anything about someone losing the games. And when you lose the games, you lose MMR and you're gonna be ranked down. So when a Smurf player does that, you can't really do much. Now, what do I think Valorant should do to decrease the amount of smurfs? I feel like there are some tools that you can use to make sure that the numbers of smurfs will be lower than higher. For example, verifying the account with a telephone number is not very effective, but it is a little bit, right? If you want to play ranked, you need to have your account tied to a phone number. And I know I'll just take a sister's phone number, my dad's, my mom's, and so on, and I can have 4 accounts. And yes, you can, but it requires you a little bit of work and it's annoying. But in general, it always will just decrease the amount of smurfs just a little bit. So it should be done, right? But the most important thing is to actually motivate people to play on one account. You want them to be wanting to play on their account that they main, so they don't get frustrated or just they don't feel like, that the main account is not good anymore or something. You should have a motivation to grind on your main account because there's something to play for. And I will talk about that because that's a very big overarching issue. There's nothing to play for in Valorant Ranked. That's the main issue that I have in the game, and also the community, and they are definitely right about that. But combating Smurfs is tied to this. Since there's nothing to play for, people just do some challenges or just make a new account to feel fresh. But they should be playing on the main account where there's specific MMR tied to them. And that's another point. The MMR, once it settles on your main account, it's very hard to change it by much, because if you have thousands of games on one account, the MMR is like marginally moving up and down with every win and loss. But when you make a new account, the MMR fluctuates super hard because the game adjusts so hard to your first game's performances, judging which rank you should be. That's why I made the point previously with if you wreck people and you get insane numbers, you're getting boosted up very fast. But also, if you don't perform, your MMR also is very volatile and is losing a lot of it as well. So that could be fixed. That could be making people incentivized to play more on the main account if there would be a periodical MMR reset, but a hard reset. We never had, for the past 5 years, we never had a hard reset of MMR of any accounts. The only thing that was happening was a flattening. Whenever there's a new episode, we just chop a little bit of the MMR and just put it down. But at the highest ranks, at the lowest ranks, nothing is happening. At the lower ranks, you just use your visual rank, but your MMR stays the same. So you still have exactly the same lobbies, just the visual ranks are different. But if you're like Immortal 3 and there was like this soft reset, then your MMR gets flattened to like Immortal 1, even with the Radiance, and now you play for all of you from the same point to get to the Radiant. That was the only thing that was happening. Now I feel like people should have an option to reset their MMR either periodically globally, or just choose to reset the MMR on their account, right, on purpose. Like you could do that once per year. You can have an option to reset your MMR and just completely start from scratch on the same account that you have your skins for. So you're incentivized to try because you didn't like your MMR. Maybe you just kind of placebo that you feel like you deserve a higher rank and you would like to try again. You just reset the MMR. You can do that once per year. Because the fact is that if you are a seasoned veteran and you played on one account from the beginning of the game when you were worse, the MMR is gonna be worse on that account if you just cook up a new account and play on that new account. That's why so many people realize that if they had been, for example, Diamond on the main account, but then they started playing and they were like stuck in an MMR that was not very good, they make a new account, try hard, they instantly gonna be back to Diamond and probably even reach their peaks coming to Ascendant because they are just so much better. The history of that account is fresh, so the game sees only your recent most performance and will boost up your MMR very high. That's why you can see higher ranks on newer accounts than your main accounts most of the time. So I feel like those decisions could really help with combating Smurfs. Before we start another long topic, I want to briefly touch one of the concerns being monetization. And I feel like that is completely made up. Like, I agree, the skins in Valorant can be giga expensive. But is that a problem? No, it's not. Because you don't have to buy the skins. You are not entitled to have the skins. You have pretty cheap battle passes that have a lot of skins. You have, in general, the option to not buy anything and still enjoy the game for free. And also, whenever I hear that someone says, oh, instead of adding new features like replay, and by the way, we're gonna talk about the replay mode later on. But if someone says and complains that instead of adding new features to the game, they do more skins, I legit already know that this person should never be trusted with any opinion of any kind. Because if you would be an adult who knows how business is run, you should be aware of two things. One, a company has to make money. Two, different departments have completely different tasks. And the team that is building skins and making their own product has no idea what the department of new features is doing. And they are completely not correlated. One has the job of doing skins and earning money, the other one has features and they just do something for the game. Maybe the replay mode, maybe it's gonna be some aim maps in the future, who the fuck knows. But then my point is, those are completely different departments that even if you would move developers from one to other, they would not align because they have different skill sets and requirements. So please, for the love of God, stop complaining about the prices of the skins like they actually matter for other features for the game. It's not related to each other. But, and I did a video about this like probably like 3 or 4 years ago, I do think Radiant should not exist, or Radiant should be added for free when you buy a set of skins. In general, I think Radiant is just dumb. It's an artificial currency that should never exist in this game. Your skins should be either unlocked by getting kills on the skins, which would be like a sort of achievement and will also incentivize you to play on one account when you have the skins, or Radiant should be just added when you buy the skins. And that's it. I know the video is already pretty long, but now I will actually touch on topics that I think are the most important and are connected to my own opinion. Because so far I kind of like dispelled some of the opinions on why Valorant is dying. But now I actually do have solid criticism towards Riot when it comes to the next points. Because it is something that kills my enjoyment of playing Valorant. And actually I know 100% it kills the enjoyment of my friends and of my community, and many people quit the game over the following issues. And the first one is toxicity. I don't think anyone can disagree with me here that when I say that toxicity is the #1 problem in the game. And toxicity is the first reason why people quit the game, and toxicity is the reason why game quality becomes lower and lower over time. And now I do blame Riot for this as well, because even though the toxicity is a problem of the players, it's the community that is toxic towards other players, Riot is not doing enough to combat the toxicity. Even though they changed the behavior punishment already, and it's apparently, I don't know the details, but I do believe when they say that, Riot said that the punishments are now more harsh than they were in the past, but they are still not harsh enough. I think that in current state of the game, it's actually the worst it has been in the 5 past years. The amount of harassment, sexual harassment, but also just toxic harassment, racism, xenophobia, overall just shitty behavior is rampant. 80% of the games, minimum 80% of the games on average are toxic. And that's not only my opinion. That is actually, we had research that said that. There was a research in the Offenburg University in Germany which explored harassment and overall toxicity in Overwatch and Valorant. And TLDR, 80% of the matches had been affected by shitty behavior. That's insane. Like, I cannot believe that a woman playing this game cannot just have a normal game. I'm a man, and I'm already like, I'm at a boiling point. After 5 years of playing this game, I have enough of toxicity and harassment, and I lived in a delusion before. I thought that just muting the toxic people is enough. I thought that always trying my best in the first moments is enough, and then if someone gets toxic, muting them and still trying my best, communicating, giving info, all of that, I thought that's important. But after 5 years of constant harassment, I don't find myself in that point anymore where I can handle it anymore. I need to either turn off the voice comms myself or become toxic myself, and I don't want that. And I don't blame anyone now of turning off the voice comms. It becomes really unbearable when you're consistently exposed to the harassment and toxicity over time, every single game essentially. Like 1 out of 5 games, maybe no one will actually say something toxic or blame you or yell at you, or if you're a woman, just get told to go to the kitchen. I cannot imagine how hard it is for a woman to play any competitive team game, but specifically Valorant, Overwatch, or CS. It's unbearable. And I do blame Riot for allowing this to linger that long in our community and get to a point where people see that the punishment for being an asshole doesn't get them anything. Like, sometimes I check like those people who are getting, who I know that are getting suspended, and they go back after a few hours. And then they just spam games. And I can tell you that there's a pattern of behavior. People who are toxic in the game, it's just not a one-off. They're gonna be doing that over time in many games. It's just a shitty behavior that is ingrained in the community and needs to be tackled. In my opinion, we need right now a really big, open, transparent talk from Riot about how they will tackle toxicity in the future. Because if there's a reason, if ever Valorant will die, like actually die, it's gonna be because of toxicity. Nothing else matters as much as the abuse coming from other players towards you, because that will kill the enjoyment of the game. That's why I quit CS. That's why I quit League of Legends. I just didn't want to deal with the shitty people anymore. And that's it. And by the way, it's incredibly funny how people call me toxic in the game. But if you watch my stream, you would see for 5 past years that I'm always trying my best. IGL, try to call info, try to play for the team. And it always spawns around to people yelling at you for IGLing, people telling you, let me play my game, people yelling you, you're not my fucking coach, this is not VCT, why do you care about the game, why do you, that's the funniest thing, why do you care about the game? I care about the game because I want to win the game. Apparently it's a fucking secret for other players. They don't want to win the game, they just want to be toxic and just shoot people in the head. Maybe that's the reality, but it shouldn't be. We should play the game to have fun and play the game together in a team to actually win, which is the goal of the game in a ranked mode. Now, I will say something that many people will think it's extremely controversial. And probably, to be fair, it probably is. But in my opinion, I think we should really get this solution in Europe and in America, which is we should copy what South Korea does. And I know... Okay, so I don't know if you still watch it, but if you came to the video to this point, please, this is very important for me to understand, make a reply about this topic, okay? Type in a comment, do you agree with what I'm gonna say, or do you not agree with what I'm saying? When it comes to toxicity and cheating, South Korea battles that by requiring you to tie your account to your national ID. Because of that, most people try avoiding shitty behavior in online games and other activities online, because they know that you can always tie a person to an account. Now, I think that is something that we should actually think about implementing in online games in Europe and in America, because the toxicity here is just unbearable. And by the way, one more thing about this topic. I think, this is my suspicion, I didn't talk with the Valorant devs about this in general, but I think that the developers who are based in America, and that's essentially the entire Valorant team, are not aware how big of a difference in toxicity there is in EMEA and in Pacific when you compare it to Americas. In Americas, if you play in North America, you essentially only have one language. There are some people who speak Spanish, maybe some who speak French, but essentially 99% of the players playing in those servers are going to be speaking English. They're all from the same country as well. A majority of them are coming from the same country, just from a different state. Now, when you compare it to EMEA and Pacific, we have, I don't know about Pacific, but in EMEA, we have 26 official languages. Speaking English is not something that comes very easy, even at this age, to many players. I need to make a separate video about every single server that we have in EMEA. It's gonna be not a fully serious video, but holy shit. You cannot speak English on Stockholm because it's infested with Eastern Europeans, and you cannot speak English on Paris. You cannot speak English on Madrid. It's terrible. It's terrible. People will yell at you when you require them to speak English. People will yell at you in Turkish, in Polish, in Russian, in every language imaginable from Europe, but it will not speak English because that's beneath them, apparently. I don't know. But in general, both Pacific and EMEA are filled with historical xenophobia. People in Europe hate each other just because they come from different nations. It's happening so often in my games at an immortal level that you couldn't believe. If you wouldn't be watching my streamed games, you would not believe the stories that I have to tell. The amount of people who just, if you're German, you hate the French. If you're Polish, you hate the Germans. I'm using stereotypes and generalizations, but those are the examples that I have in my game. Almost every day. People just hate each other just because they come from a different country and have a different accent. And they start insulting each other based on that. It's unbearable. It's really unbearable, and it's I don't think that the American developers are aware how big of a problem that is in Pacific and in EMEA. Something has to be done about this, because there's no way that this is sustainable in the next 5 years. After 5 years of playing Valorant, it becomes unbearable. I cannot imagine what will happen even more. After, like, what will happen in the next years. And I'll talk about the number 2 reason for me and for most of the community on why I care less about Valorant lately than I had been in the past. And that is matchmaking. In general, we're going to talk about 2 things: matchmaking as an actual players and motivation when it comes to playing matchmaking, like ranked system. Both of them are not ideal, let's just say it lightly. And they require really big reworks to make sure that players will take the games more seriously and would like to play the games even. Because that's another problem. The motivation to play ranked is at the lowest it has been in the past 5 years. That's at least my opinion. I'll tell you from my own perspective. I don't know if you have the same opinion. Again, if you could share your stories in the comments, that would be fantastic. For me, the motivation to play ranked is first and foremost to learn the game. I love learning the min-max of every single agent, the interactions, what can I achieve with those agents. That is the main motivation for me. But if that main motivation is being stopped by 1, the toxicity that we spoke about before, and 2, the lack of any actual system to motivate me to get a treat for playing ranked, then we have a problem. So what I mean by saying treat, the treat that we currently have in the game is the visual rank. So from Iron to Radiant, that is your visual motivation to get better at the game and have a visual confirmation that you achieved certain goals, and then you get gun buddies, right? And the second one is well, actually prizes. That's it. So visual rank and prizes, right? But in the case of Valorant, there's not many. There's not any, essentially. If you're someone like me who plays for the 5 years, the only reward that I ever gotten by playing Valorant is in episode 1, I got the Radiant gun buddies by playing solo queue there, and 2, I got Immortal gun buddies in every other episode. I legit have like 20 gun buddies that are Immortal and 2 gun buddies that are Radiant. And there's such a big gap between reaching Immortal 3 and reaching Radiant, specifically on EMEA, which is like one of the biggest servers alongside Pacific. It's almost impossible for someone that is like not really super good, but okay at the game, to jump from Immortal 3 to Radiant. It's like, it's almost impossible, specifically when you solo queue. I would have to become much better aimer, right? But then if it's not reasonable for me to sacrifice that time to become such a better aimer, then I'm reaching that Immortal 3 and I don't have a goal to play anymore, because there are no other prizes and there's no other motivation. So many people are in the same spot as I am, but specifically the ones that are toxic will then dish out because they don't have anything dangling behind in front of their eyes to actually work for. That's why Smurfing increase. That's why people are toxic more and more, because they know they have nothing to work for, so what do they care? And that is an overall problem. Like, the matchmaking system, the ranked system, needs prizes for playing the game. Maybe even Radianite. Radianite should not exist in general, but at least give us Radianite for finishing specific ranks or playing amount of games or winning amount of games, whatever, just any prizes. Radianite, Valorant points would be fantastic. Or, I mean, skins would be great, but I don't believe that could be achievable, at least short term. But it would be fantastic. We could get some like seasonal skins that you get for playing a certain season and achieving specific rank. But the gun buddies are not it. They were it for the first episode, maybe two, but not after that. And thinking about it, how it worked in other games, League of Legends, guys, had physical items for reaching Challenger, which is basically Radiant in Valorant. So if you reached Challenger in League of Legends in the past, they changed that, I know, but in the past you were getting a jacket or a backpack. It was sick. Like, that was such a sick, I know, a very expensive thing, but getting a jacket for reaching a rank in a game, that is an absolute sick merchandise. And I know it's not feasible, but I'm just giving you an example that there can be something done. Doesn't have to be that expensive, can be something in game, doesn't have to be a physical item, but it would mean a lot for the players if they would have a reason to play the ranked games and get better at the game at the same time. And that will decrease toxicity, because even though when there's more competition, it creates more toxic environment, that toxic environment would be at least motivated to play the game together more than the one that we have currently that doesn't give a fuck. That's the main problem with the toxicity right now. People are becoming more and more toxic because they don't care. We want people to care about the game first and foremost. And now, connected to entirety of the experience playing ranked, let's talk about the matchmaking itself. The matchmaking itself has some issues. The main issue is there's no dedicated solo queuing system, and the stacks, you know, duo, trio, and 5 stacks are playing in one leaderboard. In general, this created few issues, so at least so far, and the biggest one was getting boosted by playing 5 stacks. And by the way, Riot made a change to actually combat this. And they, in one of the patches, I feel like a year ago, maybe 2 years ago, they wanted to limit the amount of ranks disparity that could be possible in the 5 stack. I think it was meant to be reduced to 6. So if someone was like Immortal 3, you could only play with someone who was Diamond 3 or something like that. And no one lower. But the outrage of the community was so big that they cannot play with their own friends that Riot changed it back. And now people are complaining that people are getting boosted by 5 stacks and are abusing on the Smurfs, because that's what happens. When you allow 5 stacks to play within any ranks, you will have Immortal and Radiant players playing on the Smurfs that are like Silver and manipulate the matchmaking, because the game searches 5 stacks versus 5 stacks, but with an average rank. It doesn't count who's the strongest in both of those teams. It counts the overall rank, or MMR in this case as well. So essentially, a one Immortal 3 player who's on his legit account can be boosted by 4 other Smurfs that are playing on lower accounts, because the opposing team is going to be averaged against this Immortal 3 plus Silvers, for example, and they will have as the opponents like an average Diamond team. And that creates its own ecosystem of boosting people to Radiant and Immortal accounts by just abusing the system. And this is only allowed because Riot reverted this change that the community complained about, with the maximum difference between the ranks that can be happening in a 5 stack. But not only that, what annoys me about this the most is the fact that it's all happening in the same leaderboard. When I play like 99% of my games solo queue, I am in the same leaderboards as people who only play 5 stacks or only play trios, and so on and so on. Trios are though only below Immortal, so that doesn't really apply to me anymore, but it is happening a lot. Oh, but wait, it does apply, because whenever there's a reset, that's completely off topic, but I will forget about this. If there's a reset of ranks, but it doesn't reset the MMR, right? Then you will have Radiant players trio queuing as an Ascendant player while being in a lobby with all Radiant players. So once a reset of ranks happens, it's the perfect moment for the Radiant players to abuse the trio stacking against 5 solo players, for example. It happens a lot. It actually happens a lot, but I digress. Now, there's also many instances of games where, as a solo player, I'm playing in a team of 5 solo queuers against a team with 2 duos. So it's like 2 stacks against 5 solos. That is not fair. And that is not fair either for the 5 players or either not fair for the 2 solo queuers, for the 2 duo queuers. Because let me explain. Almost every single game that has this 5 solo queues against 2 duos and 1 solo queuer is ending up in a horrible experience for either one team or the other team. There's a very high chance that the 5 solo queuers will see that they're playing against 2 duos and will start just yelling and being toxic towards each other, and it's not fair and so on. And the 5 solo queuers will just be in shambles, and the opposing team will have 2 duos that work with each other. And because, you know, there's 2 duos, you are guaranteed that those duos, at least the 2 players between the duo, will cooperate with each other. So there's gonna be a higher level of play coming from that 2 duos plus 1 solo team. Now there's also a high chance that the 2 duos will just completely shut down the comms from the 5th player, will not communicate even with the 5th player, and be incredibly toxic towards each other as well. And then it's a blowout and bad experience for everyone involved. Those games are a terrible scenario for both teams in most of the cases. I don't understand how is it even possible that the matchmaking system that gets you a match within like 10 to 15 seconds, because that's how often I just get matched. I barely have matches being looked for more than a minute at an immortal level. There's so many people playing. So how does the matchmaking system think that it's fair to get 5 solo queuers with 2 duos and 1 solo? That doesn't make any sense. And it's really upsetting to me because it happens many times. It is really incredibly annoying. Now, why do I think solo queuing is important? It's important in my opinion because it would motivate people to have more let's say motivation to play with the other people that they don't know, at least in theory, right? And 2, it would motivate them to actually care more about the game because of the fact that we would have a separate queue for solo queuers and a separate queue for flex, just like we have in League of Legends. Although in League of Legends, you can only solo queue once you reach Masters. Before Masters, you can still duo queue. In a perfect world that I imagined, you would have a full solo queue for Valorant players, doesn't matter which rank, below Ascendant or not, and the full flex queue in the other one with separate leaderboards with the same ranks, right? So it would actually make the matchmaking the most fair if you would have solo queuers only, because if the match starts with 10 solo queuers, you are guaranteed that all of those players not only don't know each other in most cases, but they also have very similar MMR. So the game should be the closest and the most fair for everyone involved, because there's no one manipulating the matchmaking. And sometimes the manipulation is not on purpose. Sometimes two friends just want to play with, I don't know, Immortal 3 player wants to play with an Ascendant 2 friend or something, right? But the disparity between them is going to be so big, they're going to manipulate the matchmaking system for the opponent's team by doing that. And that's a big problem. And now, whenever I say this opinion about the solo queue being so important for this game, I'm always getting shut down by the same counter argument, which is that people would stop caring about the game because they would be playing in a flex queue that would not be as important as the solo queue, because that's where all the real players will play. Now, that's how it is in League of Legends. People don't really give a fuck about the rank that they have in flex. The only one that counts is solo queue. That is true. That is true. I'm not denying that. But you know what's the alternative? The alternative is now the reality that we have in Valorant. No one gives a single fuck about your own rank anyway. Because the entire leaderboard is compromised when it comes to its integrity. We have people being boosted by 5 stacks. We have people not caring about the game because there's no prizes. No one cares about the ranks anyway. So why not make it better from this point? And having solo queue enabled would make the game so much better. Even if it would be just still one leaderboard, but the game would force you to find 9 other solo queuers when you queue yourself, would be a blessing. Really, the games are much more enjoyable if you have 10 solo queuers rather than have a mix of duos, trios, or if you play just... It's just more enjoyable if you know that the game is fair. And I have to say as well that if you cared so much about playing with friends who are so much lower ranked than you, why don't you play unrated with them? Like, if you care about winning, why are you queuing with someone who is like 10 or 15 ranks below you? It makes no sense. This argument makes absolutely no sense. It's just people are ego tripping by playing for a shiny rank that doesn't matter, and it's a big problem for the community, and I think it's a big problem for Riot as well, and it kills the enjoyment of the game. The matches are not fair, and we really badly need to separate those two entities into separate queues. That's at least my opinion. This video is definitely becoming way too long, so I'm gonna try to like sum it up now. But before we go and sum it up, there's still one more thing that I would like to discuss, is the features. People are saying that Valorant is dying because there's no new features added, and to some degree I agree, and I have some features I would like to have added into the game as well, but most of the complaints that I see are essentially meaningless as well. Like, for example, one of the biggest complaints that I always see for years now is the lack of the replay system. And to be fair, I think replay system would be really cool. I think replay system would help me personally, and it's a feature that definitely would be nice to have. But people treat the replay system, the demo system, like it's something that without it the game cannot function. We are 5 years into Valorant. Esports is doing great. Let's say tier 1 VCT is doing great, and the numbers are going up. People are excited to watch the matches. People watch the matches all the time, and the game itself is becoming very popular, and it established itself as one of the, in my opinion, new modern classics. Now, people treat it like it's a garbage game because it doesn't have replay system, but Overwatch has it, CS has it, and there was one newer game that was like released lately and had replay system. Oh, Marvel Rivals, right? Anyway, my point is, people are like trying to crucify Valorant developers for not adding the replay system. Now, first, I will tell you that the replay system, from a Riot's perspective, if they will release it, it needs to be well done. It needs to be a tool that is gonna be easy to understand, because there's nothing more frustrating than loading a demo and not knowing how to fucking use it. And that's how it was in CS. That's how it was in CS 1.6, in Source, and so on. The replay system was broken, always. It was always hard to load demos and operate with them. They were breaking, they were crashing the game. That's how it was in CS. It's not a gold standard by any means. And if I'm not mistaken right now, in CS2, the demos don't even work, from what I know. At least for the matchmaking, for the premier matches and so on. So, yeah. Now, I do think replay system would benefit a lot of people, but those people who would benefit the most from it is content creators, not your casual gamer. Me, for example, I have this idea of making a series of analyzing games from one player's perspective and teach people how that player is playing the game, how he thinks about the game, and analyzing his every move, like how to play like Durka, how to play like Mako, how to play like Buzz, and so on. It's that kind of series with a very min-maxed VOD review of a player. That would be great content for me. I cannot do it right now because I don't have access to a POV of a player, right? But I would if there would be a replay system. Now, the thing is, that's me benefiting from it. You know who would be not happy when the replay system is added? The best VCT teams would be actually upset that the replay system is added, because then the other VCT teams are gonna be able to scout them better and more efficiently, and are gonna be able to snatch the strategies from other teams, lineups, positioning, like in-depth utility setups. All of that would be immediately stolen by the lesser teams who don't have that kind of preparation themselves, right? So why is the community yapping about not having the replay system being important? Because they think it would help them VOD reviewing themselves to get better. Now, I have a newsflash for you. When the replay system is gonna be released, for a week, people will be obsessing about watching their own VODs and thinking, how cool, now I can learn. After that, after the week, they're gonna forget about it, this function ever existing, and the only reason they're gonna ever use the replay system for is to make clips out of their multi-kills. That's gonna be the function for 99% of the player base, for the casual players. But the funniest thing is, the replay systems are always broken, and they never be the same as you see them from their own point of view. Your crosser on the replay system is not gonna be the same way reacting to your movement and being held in the same way like you did it in the game. The reason for that is, the replay system, the demo, is not a video recording of how you played the game. It's a file with 0 and 1s that is recreating your game. It's being made anew from the same informations, but the outcome might not be exactly the same because it's a artificial recreation of the game that you just played. So for games like, for example, League of Legends, a replay system doesn't have to be perfectly in sync the same way that a CS demo or a Valorant demo needs to be. So when you watch some demo reviews of like a CS player, you're gonna see how out of sync they are, how the aiming looks weird. People will not find cheaters. That's another argument. People will say that with demos, we're gonna be able to find cheaters. No, you won't. There will be no conclusive information about it. Unless someone is literally rage hacking for a wall. Like, yeah, okay, that is gonna be very obvious. But the ones that are smart about it, you're not gonna catch them. And also, Vanguard is doing a fantastic job. I can bet my left hand on it, and I have no source, so I'm making this up. But I can bet my left hand that Vanguard is the best anti-cheat there is on the market. Counter-Strike is garbage. It's absolute garbage level of anti-cheat. Fortnite, a joke as well. Marvel Rivals, I have no clue. Overwatch, there's tons of cheaters there as well. In general, playing Valorant for me feels like a breath of a fresh air because I don't even think that someone can be cheating in my game. Specifically now with the rollback of RR, where even if someone was cheating but it gets caught, then I know I'm gonna get my points back. So it's like, I don't need the replay system for that. So I feel like people misplace the reasons why they feel like Valorant is dying, and one of those is actually the lack of replay system. Now, I'll tell you the one feature that I think should be in the game, and that is a 1v1 aim map. And I feel like it's such a low effort thing to do. Like creating a 1v1 small map should not take a lot of time. And I know, like spoken like a true expert, I have never created a map. I have no clue what I'm talking about. But I do think that a 1v1 aim map would be really beneficial for the entire community. It would be really fun to have, and 1v1 with your friends, with your best friend is always fun. That's how I always had fun in CS as well. Like we're always doing warm-ups just against each other. So yeah, that's one of the features that I feel like has to be added as soon as possible. I hope it will be added. So let's do a summary. Is Valorant dying? It is for me. It is for me because the game becomes less and less enjoyable, but not because of the game. Just because of the people who are ruining the experience for me and for other people. Now, I have to say, Valorant is my favorite game in a very, very long time. I think the balance of it is pretty good. There are some outliers, like the Tahoe situation and maybe the Chamber in the past, but in general, I feel like this game is balanced pretty well. The weapons are pretty balanced. Even when there were weapons that were broken, people were not listening to me saying that it's broken, like the Stinger, for example. And I feel like I can play the game and enjoy it. There are some few things that I would tweak, definitely, like the existence of Reyna that ruins the experience for other players as well. But in general, when I load into the game, I feel like I can always learn something new. And the only problem, the major problem that I have is the overall toxicity. I'm also like very dissatisfied with the level of knowledge that people have while playing this game. And I have been delusional about it for the past 5 years. But that's a topic for a different discussion, probably for the next video. And I'll probably name it How to Win More Games in Ranked, because I finally found a solution for myself after being in delusion for 5 years. So to sum it up, I love Valorant. I hope Riot is gonna fix the major issue being the toxicity and the matchmaking and the prizes for playing ranked, because actually those are the three main reasons, right? Toxicity, ruining experience for many players, including myself, and people are quitting the game over that. It's number one, has to be fixed. Harsher penalties and maybe an honor system to motivate people to act well, so they can get rewarded for acting good, you know, in good faith. 2, matchmaking system has to be improved, that's for sure. The 5-stack problem and the lack of solo queue. And 3rd, rewards for playing ranked. Those 3 things are, personally, in my opinion, the first things that Riot needs to fix if they don't want to lose the players that mean well for the game. Because over time, for the last 5 years, we are losing the players that we would like to have in the game, but we are gaining the players that we don't want to have in the game. Shitty, toxic players. Thank you for watching.